My name is Pam Simon. My adopted son Matthew was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when he was 15 months old. This is our story. Matt came to live with us when he was 3 months old as our foster child. He became available for adoption when he was 3 years old, and my husband and I adopted him at that time. He had been diagnosed at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. He was there for medical tests, and one of the medical students who was following his case had sat in on a seminar given by one of the two doctors who actually named fetal alcohol syndrome. So he brought that doctor and his entourage upstairs to see Matt, and he was the one who diagnosed him. When Matt was 2 years old, I was able to worm my way into a program at the Learning Impaired Center for preschoolers. It was a signing program intended for children with hearing impairment. But Matt had no verbal skills, and he was beginning to demonstrate a lot of behavior problems because he simply could not express his needs. That was probably the best program I've ever had Matt in. When Matt was in elementary school, I felt the teachers had a one-size-fits-all teaching method. And often they would say to me, Matt's different. And although he may have been unique to them, I told them that there was an army of children with fetal alcohol syndrome coming up behind Matt, and they better get a handle on how to deal with this. As far as IEPs, to me it was more like fill in the blank. They had low expectations for Matt. They often did not want to give an accuracy percentage higher than 60%. Well, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. The other thing that I struggled with for many years was trying to get extended school year services for Matt. That is a state-mandated, unfunded program, and our school district did not want to give that to anyone. Fortunately, I had Matt in an outstanding day camp program that was 5 days a week from 9 until 2, staffed by special education teachers. When Matt was 17 years old, he moved to a residential facility called Flat Rock Care Center. And while he lived there, he began attending a tri-county program that was housed in the basement of a church in a very small town. There were 8 students, 1 teacher, 2 aides. Every day of the week they had a job experience, a different job experience. They did janitorial work at the water treatment plant. They worked next door in the library. They washed police cars across the street. The favorite job, of course, was working at the pizza shop. But Matt thoroughly enjoyed it, and he really seemed to blossom in this type of a program. My greatest hope for Matt are the same as for my other children. I hope he's happy, and I hope that he has a productive life.
Tell us about your room here. Do you have your own room, or do you share?
Yeah, I got my own room. I got air mattresses. It's cool. I like to sleep on an air mattress in my room. I got a good spot for it.
Tell us about your job.
I like my job with it. I work second shift. Where is it, Jamie? Uniworks.
What do you do there, man?
I do the boxes, put milk in, clothes, all that. That's
Do you
it?
have anything else maybe you want to
No.
say to teachers? That's all we're doing.
Stay in school, teachers.
That's good advice. Excellent. See?
That's a wrap.
You are viewing Module 2 of a 4-module series that discusses the alcohol screening and brief intervention process to decrease alcohol-exposed pregnancies. The objectives for Module 2 are to discuss alcohol's effect on a pregnant woman, describe fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, also known as FASD, or sometimes FASD, and list the effects alcohol has on a developing brain. So what is the leading known cause of mental retardation in the United States? That's right, it's prenatal exposure to alcohol. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorders is an umbrella term describing the range of effects that can occur in an individual who is prenatally exposed to alcohol. There are several acronyms associated with the disorder, including FAS, which is fetal alcohol syndrome, the most severe of FASD, ARND, or alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder, and ARBD, or alcohol-related birth defects. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorders are caused when a woman drinks while she's pregnant. FASD affects at least 40,000 newborns each year. The prevalence of FASD is estimated to be 10 per 1,000 births, or 1 per 100 births, and it now outranks Down syndrome and autism in its prevalence. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is an invisible brain disability that is 100% preventable.
If my son was Down syndrome, you would see the disability, but he doesn't. It's brain damage that you can't. That's why they call it the invisible disability. It is an invisible disability, and we have people in our society, diagnosed or not, with this disorder, and they are in every aspect of society. They have the primary disabilities where they're born with possibly the brain damage or the facial features or whatever, but they know from research that they can encounter and have secondary disabilities, and that's like school problems. Well, we've dealt with that. We've been out of school for 18 months. You know, we're on an IEP. We're hoping to get him to graduate. I mean, we've dealt with the school issues. They have issues with the law. Okay, my son has problems with stealing. And so I know that if he decides to steal something out in the community, there's no police officer in the world that's going to look at him and go, oh, that's a child with a disability. I mean, he's going to jail. And so you're fighting against the disability all the time because they don't get it. They just don't get it, you know. And so even though he's a really good kid at heart, he does things that are very troubling behaviors that, you know, people look at it and go, well, that's just bad parenting. Well, it's not bad parenting. It's because he has this disorder and he looks like a typical 14-year-old.
Let's take a look at the blood alcohol concentration for a 130-pound woman. With each added drink, the blood alcohol level goes up and the hours needed to clear the alcohol from her system increases. There is still alcohol present in the bloodstream hours after a drink is consumed, even if she is feeling sober. There are also many variations in alcohol metabolism thanks to genetics, body size, timing of drinks, and also consumption of food and the woman's tolerance. Here we see what happens to a woman's and a fetus's blood alcohol concentration after consuming one drink. Although the woman's blood alcohol concentration peaks higher and faster, the developing fetus is exposed to the alcohol longer. Their immature livers cannot metabolize the alcohol with any efficiency. An unborn baby's blood alcohol concentration will be the same as mom's, but for a longer time. Another way to depict the alcohol exposure to the fetus is to consider cumulative fetal exposure. A typical pregnancy lasts 270 days. If a woman drinks just one drink daily throughout her pregnancy, her baby will consume an equivalent of 15 baby bottles of alcohol. Although a bit exaggerated, it shows the impact of a woman's drinking in a visual. At 8 weeks gestation, the unborn baby is the size of a raspberry. So how much alcohol do you think would be safe for that baby? According to research, there is no known safe amount of alcohol for the cells in an unborn baby's developing brain. Since FASD is mainly a disorder of the brain, think of all the things that our brains do for us. It knows how to organize steps for a project, decides when sarcasm is appropriate and when it isn't. It helps balance school and work schedules, time management. It helps you make that free throw or stop a soccer goal. It can help you remember the words to a song that you haven't heard in years. It reads body language and cues that aren't spoken. It reminds you that there are different rules for different situations and different behaviors that are expected. It lets you stop, take a step back, and consider options before making decisions. It can help you look ahead and predict consequences of those decisions. But when alcohol damages the brain as it develops, many cognitive functions can be impacted. Some of these include thinking in a very disorganized way, the inability to read emotions or body language of other people, having difficulty with time and money, having trouble moving information from one situation to another. Very, very common is to think like the brain of somebody so much younger, often can't link cause and effect, often uses poor judgment, is very slow to respond, and is very forgetful. The brain on the left of your screen is a healthy baby's brain. The brain on the right is that of a baby with fetal alcohol syndrome and would be profoundly affected both mentally and physically. FASD is not all or nothing. Some infants' brains can show damage somewhere in between the healthy brain and the heavily damaged brain. This is where the spectrum comes from. Placement on the spectrum depends on the stage of development of the brain when the alcohol exposure occurs, as well as the number of exposures or frequency of alcohol consumption. It is known that binge drinking has much more damaging effects than a single drink consumed a few days a week. In other words, 3 drinks in one sitting would be more damaging than 3 drinks consumed over 3 nights. Every baby reacts differently to alcohol. No one can predict how each baby will be impacted. Because the brain grows every single day, it is never safe to recommend alcohol consumption in one trimester or another. It is a misconception that the 3rd trimester is somehow safer than the first 2. That is why there is no known safe time or amount of alcohol. But pregnant women still consume alcohol during pregnancy. It's important to understand why before conducting an intervention. From not knowing she is pregnant to thinking it's okay because someone else told her it was okay to drink during pregnancy. There are lots of reasons that a woman might drink when she's pregnant, but she doesn't drink alcohol because she wants to hurt her baby. So what problems do individuals with FASD have? A University of Washington study shows the percentage of people age 60 to 51 with FASD who had difficulties in the following areas. As you can see, individuals with an FASD have significant issues that impact the community in which they live. This is not a personal issue, but one that impacts everyone, making it a public health issue.
My son has services through the school, through DDS. He's going to need lifetime care. I mean, all of that impacts us as a society. It's a hugely, hugely costly disability. You know, they estimate up to $2 million in the lifetime of one individual. I mean, that's a lot of money for our society. So it's impacting our entire community. It's not a family disorder, it's a community disorder. This is from Warren K. Fountain, and I found it somewhere in one of his things online. And this is what I think sums up why it's an important issue for all of us. He says, FASD is an important public health issue that is preventable and underdiagnosed and that has high human and financial costs. You know, and we can look at the money, but when we look at the human cost, this is a disability my son has to live with for the rest of his life. And my husband has said, do you know how smart this child would be if it weren't for this, the impact of what it's done. Because he's a really smart kid in a lot of ways. But the disability so interferes with his day-to-day living.
In this module, we discussed the effects that alcohol has on a pregnancy and the developing fetus. We talked about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, or FASD, and how it creates lifelong consequences for those affected. Module 3 will take you through the screening and brief intervention process and motivational interviewing.